I'd like to call the Delaware County Redevelopment Commission meeting to order. It is February 14th, time's 9 o'clock. Yes, March. It says February 14th.
Sorry. My
March
apologies on the
14th.
agenda. March.
Which actually we need to start with the public hearing. So,
Yeah, just formally open the public
Yeah.
hearing, take any questions,
we'll go
comments.
ahead, open the public hearing, and we'll open up for comments.
On the confirmatory resolution.
Right. Yes, sir.
I have a property right along where this trail is going, and I just want to know, once the trail's in place, is there any restrictions that we would have or responsibilities that we would have concerning that trail?
Okay. What kind of responsibilities?
I say that because I have a cousin who lives along the Monon Trail, and they weren't able to access the trail even though their property was right up against the trail.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know if there's similar restrictions or conditions in situations like this.
No, you should be able to access the trail from the property.
Is there any restrictions on things we put next to the trail? Plants or signs or anything like that?
I don't believe so.
We have none.
No,
We
don't have
want you to,
Utilize
from my
the trail.
standpoint, the county wants you to use it, yes. So, yeah, it's meant to be a benefit for people to walk and use, exercise, and, yeah, connectivity, and complete some of the sidewalks that should have been done years ago when development was installed, so, yeah. Yeah. So, and I know I introduced you to Sam Weber, hopefully you guys connected.
Yeah, he answered some of my questions on
Good.
access to
Okay.
property.
As we had talked on the phone, Vernon, this body in the county is pretty accommodating. So we've worked on a lot of trail sidewalk stuff north of town. And those owners of properties, we have basically, helped them work through issues, whatever that might be. So we're willing to do the same with you, so, and your neighbors.
Now, in situations like snow removal or anything like that, we don't have a responsibility, or do we?
You do not.
Okay.
What we're gonna look at is the county highway to maintain snow removal and everything on that out there. The reason why we would like for it to be the 10-foot wide, they can actually get a truck on there, that they can actually remove the snow off of it.
We just have to know that it's usually
Yeah.
not the first priority to get snow
Right.
removed off. But
Right.
they do the roads
Get
first.
the roads first, and then
Trails
then
might
get
be
the trails
yeah.
after that.
Trails will be later. Trails is
Yeah.
secondary.
Well, I didn't want to have to get out there and shovel.
Yeah, we don't want you to do that.
You have any other questions?
Other than talking to Vernon on the phone, I received no written or verbal comments for or against the trail.
Okay. Have any other comments?
Do you have a time frame on this?
Sam, do you want to address time
We'll
frame?
be bidding in September, so we would see construction start in the fall.
Can I get your last name, Vernon?
Veal.
Very good, just for the minutes, thank you.
Okay.
If we don't have any other further comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we'll move on to our regular meeting. If everybody could stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brad, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Bryce Conyers?
Here.
Angie Moyer?
Here.
James King?
Here.
Eugene Whitehead?
Here.
Carrie Wiggerly?
Here.
Paul Garrison? Here.
Okay, we need to approve the minutes for February.
So second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next, we have the confirmatory resolution 2019-004. Brenda?
Yeah, so this resolution before you this morning is the final step in the approval process for the economic development plan amendments that we did back in January. So this would just confirm the declaratory resolution that was adopted back in January, which added some project descriptions to the economic development plan.
Anybody on the commission have any questions for Brenda? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll move to the pledge resolution 2019-005.
Yeah, so this resolution pledges an amount not to exceed $3.5 million in TIF revenue from this industrial center economic development area. And that money is being pledged towards costs related to the jail project. Any amounts that are going to be remaining in that account after substantial completion of the project will be returned to the commission pursuant to a trust indenture in place. So if you have any further questions about this, I'd be happy to answer it. Also, Matt's here and he had the amounts in Exhibit A. He put together that schedule, so he can answer questions about that.
You can go over those, Matt, or?
I can quickly, and it's Exhibit A, and then also I prepared a more detailed cash flow analysis of the allocation areas, and then also of the creed out there, because you guys are contemplating a lot of different things out in that area, obviously. Based on preliminary information, we're looking at the first draw for the jail project being around 2.9 million. We used round numbers that'll get fine-tuned as we fine-tune the financing for that. 2.9 million at closing next month. That would basically draw down everything that you have left in those allocation funds in the short term, but then you'll get your first tax draw in June to replenish those, so that you have money still to fund your other projects that you've got going on. And then the second draw for the jail project would be in 2021 around substantial completion of the facility. Right now we're estimating that'll be $600,000. Again, that's preliminary. And as you can see on that schedule on page 2, you should have more than enough fund balance available to fund both of those, fund additional projects, also be making payments on your outstanding bonds. We also have included here for illustrative purposes the proposed industrial center trail bonds. I know you've approved resolutions to issue those bonds and it's still going through the process. We've assumed that gets paid from a mix of TIF and also from creed. And on page 3, we've outlined the cash flow of the creed, the ABB and the Delphi creeds. And one thing I want to call your attention to, you have no problems with fund balances and cash flow in the creed. You have more than enough money to make these bond payments. In fact, you have enough money that if you wanted to cash fund the trail project rather than issue bonds, you can make that policy decision and move forward on that. You'd obviously have to work through the creed board to get that done. But assuming you don't have any other substantial projects coming up that look to draw on the creed, you could opt, instead of issuing debt, you could cash fund the project.
Actually save us from paying interest.
Definitely. You wouldn't have to pay the interest on the bonds, have to worry about obligating the TIF revenues right now. If something else comes up in the TIF area, you would maintain that flexibility, pledge it to a different debt issue if another opportunity came forward. So I'm not one to advocate unnecessarily issuing bonds. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that option that's out there as you make your decisions and move down the public process and issuing the bonds. And you could either move forward with that, get all the approvals in place, and then make the decision, or you could just stop that process now if you guys wanted to. But wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Matt? Questions for Brenda? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Go to the joint interlocal agreement resolution.
Yeah, so this is a resolution that approves the form of this joint interlocal agreement that's actually between the Delaware County Commissioners and the Delaware County Advisory Council. But the RDC would consent and agree to the terms of that joint interlocal agreement. So that's why this resolution is in front of you this morning. And that interlocal agreement would be entered into at the time that bonds are issued for the trail project, or in the event that creed revenues are pledged towards either the bonds or the trail project itself. So that's the purpose of this resolution.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next, we'll go to the PRL and Save-A-Lot bond payoff discussion.
All right.
Matt?
I'll start with the easy one first. The Save-A-Lot bonds actually mature, and those are the 2,000 bonds that were issued out of Park One. They mature in February of next year, so you only have a couple payments left on them. But right now, you have $205,000 sitting in your bond fund and the reserve account that's associated with that bond issue. The outstanding principal amount is $195,000. Even if you just decided to pay those off in full at the next principal or at the next interest payment date, which is August, you'd owe $5,000 in interest. You have more than enough money in those accounts right now to direct First Merchants to just redeem the bonds. It would save you that final interest payment, which would be $5,800, and that's $5,800 more that you'll have to put on other projects. It's not uncommon when you get to these last payments, if you have enough in the reserve fund, you just pay off the bonds early. So I wanted to bring that before you. I personally think it's a good idea just to get that off the books and kind of move on down the road with that area. So I wanted to put that out there for your consideration. And the only requirements for the call is a 7-day notice. So you could simply instruct Brad and Joe to get a notice together, notify First Merchants, and just get those bonds paid off. So that's the Save-A-Lot bonds. The more complicated issue is the PRL bonds. Back on the theme of you guys have pretty good fund balances available in the Industrial Center TIF areas and also the CREED. And the CREED has been pledged to the repayment of those 2015 PRL bonds. We thought, well, maybe we should look at paying those off. You got about $2.2 million in outstanding principal. So we reached out to STAR to get a little bit more color on the terms of an optional redemption, because there's a provision in the bond purchase agreement for those bonds that allows STAR to levy what's called in the legal documents a funding indemnification amount. It's got a pretty broad definition of what that could entail. One of the things that could entail is a loss of margin. So what they see as being the lost earnings that they would have on this bond versus what they can invest it in now. So we reached out to STAR back in January. We received a response from them last month, February 22nd, laying out the funding indemnification concept and then their calculation of that funding indemnification amount. I won't get into the particulars of the math. I can say that I've checked the math. I know Brenda looked at it too. We see no problems with the math. I understand the concept. They're saying that you would owe them an indemnification amount of $691,109.65, in addition to interest accrued to the date of the call and the $2.172 million of bond principal. Right now, you have $793,191 of interest remaining on those bonds. So it's not quite the full amount of interest that would be due. We call that a make whole provision. It's not quite there, but it's still pretty close. You'd still save around $100,000 if you redeem the bonds now, or you could just continue paying them as scheduled. I will admit this is the first time I've seen something like this in my 13 years of doing this. I remember when we did these bonds back in 2015, we looked at that funding indemnification amount, had some conversations with STAR about that, and we were comfortable at the time that it wouldn't be something that would be quite this large. We didn't feel that was a risk that was run, and so we didn't really push too hard back on that, but things played out differently in the end. I did have a conversation with STAR's CFO, the local folks here, Mike Schmaltz. He directed me to the CFO of STAR to just talk a little bit more about this. We talked about the concept, and I asked, is there any give on this whatsoever? And he said, absolutely not. So they're sticking to this calculation, and they feel pretty strongly that this is what they're entitled to under the terms of the documents. So I wanted to share that conversation with you, this amount with you. It's a local policy decision to make with this information in hand. Like I said, you'd still save some money, but it's not quite as much as what we were hoping for when we were first looking at possibly paying off these bonds earlier this year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on really either of those.
Matt, what is the savings amount of interest if this commission decided to go ahead and pay bonds off?
Well, taking the funding indemnification amount into account, and I don't have the exact calculation of accrued interest because it depends on when you redeem it.
Yeah.
It would be around $100,000. It'd be a little bit less once you get the interest in there, but that's what you're looking at. These bonds mature in 2030, in August of 2030, so you've got a solid 11 years left with these outstanding.
One other quick question. You mentioned this body could cash fund the trail.
Mm-hmm.
If they paid that penalty to save that $100,000 in interest, could they still cash fund the trail?
If they paid the penalty, let me refer back to here, you would still be able to cash fund the trail. You just would have to, and if you're not bidding it until later this year, and you're probably not going to be paying a lot of it until next year. Since you're not cutting the check today for the PRL bond redemption, you'd be able to do it. You just would have to, plan your spending accordingly so you're not straining yourselves too much. And I think you guys are pretty good at that anyways.
Anybody have any questions for Matt?
This body is so inclined and instruct Joe and I to initiate the payoff of the Save-A-Lot bonds, which Matt started with, would say $5,800 in interest. We'll execute that.
I assume there's no early payoff penalty there.
Nope, that one is just principal and interest. Pretty straightforward. You don't see a lot of early payoff penalties anymore. You have long call periods, but you don't usually see what we have in this
What we have
instance.
at
Yeah, I took a look at that language too, and I had never seen anything like it, and it was even in the bond. I mean, they put that
It was
clause
in
in
the
the
bond.
bond and in the bond purchase agreement.
Well, and I remember very clearly going through that with them, because that was kind of a late addition to the deal back in 2015. And something that I hadn't seen before and I haven't seen since.
You never see it.
You all probably wouldn't want to speculate, so I'll hedge this that way. But do you have any opinion or idea on, from Star Bank's perspective, which way they make out better? If we pay off early, do they come out ahead, do you think?
I don't
Reinvesting that
want
money?
to speculate too much, but
Because that's another piece of that.
yeah, a level of this is that they are getting a pretty attractive. You guys are paying a pretty
Yeah.
attractive interest rate to them from
Right.
their perspective
Well,
for the
it
life of the
just-
bonds, and this somewhat discourages you.
That
from
would just
paying that
have,
early.
some negotiating leverage, although they say there is none. I just
Sure.
wondered.
Sure, I doubt they'd ever give us their full perspective.
Well, I would motion that, for Brad and Joe to start working on paying off the Save-A-Lot bonds.
Okay. You have a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second for the Save-A-Lot bonds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Does everybody want to have more discussion on the PRL bond, or?
I mean, it saved us $100,000 over, when we got 11 more years to pay on it. It makes sense to me to pay it off, but especially if,
You can pay it off. My question was, do you still have the money to cash fund the trail?
Yeah.
And he said yes,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think you got a clear path ahead of you to get it done.
Do you think it's worth trying one more time if they'll negotiate with us? I mean, or you just think it's,
I
that's just.
don't think they're gonna budge, but
Yeah,
that's me. I was
Yeah.
financial advisor calling, who
Yeah.
knows if it's someone local,
Yeah.
trying with them one more time.
So Matt,
We could probably go ahead and give them to pay off the bonds, but they could still probably go back and there's approval to pay off the bonds, is there any way we can, one more time, try to? get it down.
I'm good with that.
So when I got when Matt relayed this to me, then I forwarded it to Brendan. I'm like, is there any legal option, and Joe too, can we, in the commission, get out of this in some way? But
I know when I seen that, it was like, you gotta be kidding me.
big amount.
I've never seen anything like that.
So Matt, are you saying there's approximately $100,000 savings to the commission? That's over 11 years, right?
Yeah, well,
So
yeah,
11 more
it's,
years,
that's
is that-
that's $100,000 less in interest you'll have to pay over the next 11
Over 11
years.
years.
So time value of money, I don't have my financial
Well,
calculator.
so, I mean,
in my
other
brain this morning,
options
but-
too, is you could look at it at year 10 or year 9, or.
Yeah, you could certainly-
Depending on perspective.
Yeah. After
Or
you,
now.
yeah, after you get this project funded, maybe in a year or two, take another look at it, and it'll be a little bit less, so, you know, you got that on the table too.
Could be something you all think about, revisit.
The next
Come
meeting.
back in May and do it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
All right, we'll just put it back on Mays and, we'll look at it again.
Will do.
Okay, we'll move on to, Westdale Community Schools, Mr. Mike Bush.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Basically, you got the basic information delivered to Brad in email, and he was forwarded that to you with the history of that, of the process. And we just wanted to make sure that you knew that we've been trying to do what the commission had. You folks weren't on the commission at the time. I know that, so that was new to you. But I wanted to give you the background of what we've been doing. I hope you've had time to read that. We are asking for the residential pass-through funding that could have been passed through from 1994 to 2010. We know that the residential funding has been passed through from 2010 to the present. My question, I do have one question for the board, and that is, do you know if the residential funding for the new TIF that was created in the Gaston area, for the town of Gaston, is there residential pass-through on that? Had that been approved, Brad? I had a family situation at that time.
Yeah, it's automatic.
Under current law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that TIF boundary drawing only incorporated commercial and industrial zone properties.
Okay,
Yes.
so it did not include the entire town?
Is that?
No,
It did
I
not.
think we stayed away from the town itself.
Yeah, we just did the commercial property.
And so that only involved the petrol station and the other trucking companies on the east or west side of 69, is that
We
correct?
actually ran it all the way down, so what it was.
600.
600 and up 600, and captured some of the southern border of the town.
Okay,
It's not developed yet, but we.
and that's still Harrison, that's Harrison Township, is that correct?
I think so.
Because the town, using the town, that's Washington Township,
Yeah.
that's what, at the curve there, it changes from Harrison Township to Washington Township.
Okay, so there's some in Washington Township.
Okay.
We did go a little bit north of that.
Okay,
So Mike, I know you know, one of the reasons that was created was to help try to capture money to eventually fund water
Right.
and sewer
Sure.
service to try to help benefit your school corporation.
Right.
So, yeah, so I don't wanna think that.
oh, yeah, oh, no, we've had that discussion, and I appreciate it.
Another big economic development. We have to have water and sewer in order to have an economic development, and
Yes.
hooking you up to that was one of the keys.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And so basically, I tried to give you the background that had happened during our last request back in 13 and 14. And then our current situation is the fact that we do have two building projects going on. We're not planning on using any of the funding for the building project because that's already been bonded. We've taken care of all of that. But we have run into an issue with regard to the drainage out there. You may or may not know, but there is a peat moss bog behind the school corporation. And we had the soil tested as we were supposed to in May. And they came back fine. We had all the rains in June and July. And we must have gotten moisture saturation because it destroyed part of the clay. We ended up putting 142 stone columns in there to set the new auxiliary gymnasium on. And so, and we've taken care of all that within our bonding for the project. The issue now is that we're trying to get water away from that facility and down to the creek. And so if you look at that, I put a drawing in there on page 4 for you to look at from Beacon. And this is basically our plan. As I told Brad, we're looking for permission right now to actually seek final designs and bids on this project. We have had an estimate for the sewage or the drainage to be somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000, depending on whether we have to put in a detention pond or detention area and what that detention area would be. And so we have basically located a drain that runs along our current fence line down to that detention area. And I've identified what we're actually draining, 1 and 2, and 2 you can barely see it there. But we tried to make sure that we're gonna hook those drains. Originally in our plans, the plan was to put that water out on the parking lot and to also, they were going to put a percolation area just north of the facility and run that across the asphalt. And with our soil right now, that doesn't look like that's the best opportunity for us. So we also have had water that is in that area because that area is so flat. We don't have a lot of drop in depth between our current parking lot area and that detention pond or the creek. But that's our sole location to get the water to the creek and get it out of there. So I've given you those, and also in our project is to actually cover up some of that with asphalt. And I've given you the priority 1 and priority 2. And I'll let Kyle speak to the priority 2 in the front of the building with regard to student safety.
Kyle Mealy, I'm current superintendent. Mike is the former superintendent, but also our project manager. So just wanted to introduce myself. As you look at what would be the west side there in 2A, the front of the building in the grass area, we're trying to go down to, due to school safety, trying to go down to 1 entrance. At this time, our students enter 3 entrances, depending on our bus. We transfer in the back of the building, near, behind, closer to the baseball fields back there in that area. And we transfer all K to 12 students in that area, and then we send buses to the elementary from there with just the elementary students. But that access is 3 locations for high school students to enter, and due to the new school safety, they recommend, all school safety specialists recommend that we have 1 entrance, which would be there in the front. If we had the ability to add that 2A lane that you see across that grass in the front, it would allow our buses to enter from the south, pull up front, have a sidewalk, allow our students off at that point to enter the middle high school in our front entrance, along with all of our drop-off, and our drivers would enter at 1 location. That way they're monitored. They're also, at that point, can be any incidents that need to be checked could be checked. But we know we have students coming in 1 point, student and visitors. And then that area allows the buses to, after they've dropped off, then exit through that north side up there without going out onto 600, which becomes quite a traffic jam in the mornings and evenings, because it also butts right up there to the 28 and 600, which has the flashing light. We get a lot of traffic off of 69 on 28. So that would alleviate and create a better flow in the front. So that's what we're looking for there.
And the asphalt, we're just trying to put those, we're trying to run the asphalt down to those drains. Those would be surface drains that allow that water to get off of the asphalt as quickly as possible and down to that detention area if 1 is required. And then the additional parking would be section 3. We always have parking issues, just like a lot of facilities when we have special events at the school, whether it's graduation or elementary Christmas program is held there. We have basketball games. We host the sectional, we're sectional hosts. So those are things that we're looking to actually improve. I also included the documentation that I mentioned in the handout that I sent Brad, and that's basically just the emails from Colette, Winot, and Matt back in 2013 and 14. So I put that in there for your information. And that's where we actually got that number. And then I also included two pictures. The first one is the picture of the completed high school project. That's the rendering of what that new auxiliary gym will look like. And then we aren't requesting any funding for the elementary project, but I wanted to make sure that you saw that we are actually making progress up there too. The whole idea is to continue to make Northwest Delaware County more attractive for people to locate to and businesses to locate to. Do you have any questions?
So you guys haven't went out and actually got any bids or anything on?
We have an estimate, basically, like I said, for the drainage, because in order to get a bid, we will have to go to have, we'll have probably Ashland's go ahead and survey it, and put a drainage plan together. That'll have to be approved by the drainage board, to make sure that we're in compliance with not, putting too much water into that creek at one time. So those are the things that we know that we'll have to do to actually get that. And we're meeting with, one paving company today at 1:30. So, we'll have, basically, they're gonna measure that off and they'll give us drawings to give us a.
Then you get an estimate on that also.
Yes, so we'll have all of those, that, our thing today was to see if this is something that you think that you might be able to support before we spend the money to do our surveys, to do our drawings, and get everything squared away.
Me personally, I mean, I would be interested in it. I'd like to see the cost and everything also.
Okay.
You know, the front drive, I mean, I can see where that's an issue.
We've taken the positions with high school. We have triple threat protection going into the building, which is what they recommend. And we'll have that in our new elementary. We'll have triple threat protection there also. And we've changed that drop-off area so that we've got the office isolated.
We won't be having a meeting in April.
Mhm.
I would be interested if you guys could come back to our May meeting.
Sure.
And, even maybe ahead of time, get the information to Brad to where we can all look at it and go over it. And, but like I said, I'd be interested.
I also wanted to mention, this is John Howard. He's our new maintenance director.
Yeah.
And so John and I, as we looked at the issues that we were having with the water out there, it seemed like a logical thing. And we needed to pursue it. We think it'll solve the issues for the next 20, 25 years if we can get that taken care of.
Yeah.
You've got a good maintenance director.
Yes, you're exactly
I
right.
worked with him for a long time in previous life.
Yeah.
Mine.
I hired
Yes.
you, not mine.
Okay. Just to clarify, the ask is for the $288,325. That was the estimated loss
Up to
in
that, yes,
residential
up to that
asset.
amount for
So
the
ask
cost of
is
the
for
project.
that amount.
Right.
Right.
Anything above that, if the project would go, anything above that, that'd be the corporation's responsibility. So we were just looking at basically what was brought to the commission as a finding back in 2013-14. And as I said in the documentation, the commission at that time asked us to come back if we had any earthmoving or drainage or paving projects that we had to look at.
Right.
That's more of what you guys do, and that they might be interested in doing those if we came back, and this was a perfect time for us to get back to the commission.
I'm in favor of supporting them too, but yeah, it'd be nice to see some estimates when we
Yes.
base
Yeah.
our approvals.
Yeah, we'll have all that. Like I said, we're just asking up to that amount from the
Yeah.
commission. If it goes over that amount, then that would be the responsibility of the corporation. Because that was kind of what was documented back in 2013 and 14 at that time.
So you're basing your numbers off 4-year-old numbers?
Pardon?
You're basing your numbers off the 4-year-old numbers?
No, that's the numbers that were developed for the money, the residential money that could have been passed through from 1994 to 2010.
Gotcha.
So that number wouldn't have changed because it's historical data.
Right. Yeah, if you could get the information, email it to Brad, or Brad could, and come back in May's meeting, and we can.
We should have that for Brad in April, and then it'll take us a little while to get the surveying and the drainage stuff done, making sure we get that approved by the drainage board, because I know at the elementary, it's a really flat area, and we're putting a detention pond out there also and running it back, so we've been working with that on that project.
I think we're all interested in helping, just get us the numbers and everything.
Great.
Thank you. Come back to me and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have J. Crew, Jason?
Good morning, commission members. Thanks for allowing us a few minutes. In the scope of what you guys are gonna run through here today, this is a pretty small deal, but we just wanted to spend a few minutes to clarify part of the Morrison sidewalk project. Our firm was, Jacob's firm, United, was a successful bidder on that. We were the successful subcontract bid to his company for landscape and irrigation. As part of that, our overall package, there was a part of the job that was, we say irrigation, you were paying for somewhat of a watering system. It wasn't a full automatic irrigation system. It was sort of a series of pipes and quick coupler valves that would then allow you to hand water some sod and some plant material. The value of that was about $24,000, okay? So what happened is we got into this a little bit, we started putting some pipe and some wire, we were building it per the drawings. And where I got involved, I think, was about July. And it was at the point where we were gonna need you as the owner or the county to start getting some water meters. And I think it was, Cheryl's with me, I'm sorry I didn't introduce Cheryl. Cheryl's the one that bid the project and knows a little more details about it than I do. Anyway, I think there's gonna be 3 separate water meters you guys were gonna have to get installed. And it was kind of at that point that I got involved and started looking at some of the details. I really didn't feel like that was probably gonna be a good move for you guys or the county. I mean, living and working in Delaware County my whole life, I don't think we tend to maintain something like that in a common area well. That was gonna require a spring startup, a winterization each year, et cetera. So, at that point, we were invested in the project. We had materials, we had labor, et cetera. So it wasn't like you guys it was gonna be zero cost. Basically, at that point, it was our recommendation that we would backpedal and abandon what had been done. And I think the results, when this is said and done, is gonna be about $10,000, $11,000 after we've settled up a cost that you guys have in an irrigation watering system that is now not being put in. And I know on the surface, it's like, well, that doesn't sound any good, but I think the alternative was $24,000 in a system that probably, over the course of time, I'm guessing would have kind of become defunct. So I just want to know, I think we've worked through here with Roger and Jacob, and we've got an agreement on some money, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood. I feel like, from our perspective, we worked in your best interest. Maybe in hindsight, if I look back, it'd been better if we just installed the whole thing for the contract. You would have then paid $24,000. And that's what we were contracted to do. So anyway, I know there've been some back and forth and there've been some emails, and I just talked with Brad and I said, we've had a long relationship here. I've been on that side, and of course we're grateful for the work you guys have provided us over the years. So I just wanted to sort of clear the air there and see if there were any questions or comments, and Jacob and Roger are here too, so does that summarize it pretty well?
Yeah, the total deduct is actually 20-some thousand, because we had some work in that too, so we deducted our work and gave that money back. So, I mean, the total cost of irrigation, I think, was in the 30s.
No, let me clarify. When the project was bid, there was a deduct for the irrigation system, because there was a thought in our mind that you didn't want to put the irrigation system in. But what the fact is, we had a landscape architects did the design for the landscaping, and also they got an expert irrigation specialist to do the design for the irrigation system. And they're thinking that you need to have an irrigation system. In our back of our minds, this needs to be a deduct because we're not sure, because you only do capital projects. So we knew that going into this thing. The problem encountered was that the value that the irrigation expert quoted before the bids was $121,600 was the actual value of the irrigation system in the landscape price. The deduct from United Construction during the bid was $42,800. So we thought, okay, if they don't do the irrigation, you ought to get at least $42,800 out. But the fact of the matter is, they had already installed some conduits under some of the driveways along Bethel Avenue, which in our minds is probably not a bad deal, because if you ever have somebody put an irrigation system in the future, the conduit's already under the driveways, and so that made some sense. To make it a little more interesting, is I brought this up last month, was that we were still in shop drawing review process. The shop drawings had not been approved. In fact, there were some not complete shop drawings that were provided us anyway. But the contractor went ahead and apparently authorized the J. Crew to start the work anyway, which is, and keep in mind, when you're dealing, I guess, with a private project, maybe they don't do enough public projects, but when you do private, maybe that's something you don't see the details of. But when you deal with public funds, at least in my experience, there's a higher duty of care for taxpayers' dollars, that if you take something out, you have to account for it. And we always tell contractors, if you want to get paid for it, you got to do the paperwork. And that's common in my 40 years of doing this work for public projects. So we're on that level, and it wasn't until like August the 9th that the board finally said, don't put the irrigation system in. From that point, we got a cost in 2 months later in October, and your credit was going to be just over $11,000. And we said, wait a minute now. The deduct should have been $42,800, and then we started getting into details. Conduit was put in. Okay, so we went through that for a couple months to find out how much conduit was put in, and then we got the figures from through Jay. Keep in mind, there's no contract between you and Jay. It's just between United Construction. So we generally don't get involved in subcontractor issues. That's really should be between the two, these guys. But nevertheless, when you have those figures, there was amount for restocking fee, which I can see that if that was going to be the case. But keep in mind, that's why I came to the board last month and explained to you, this is a matter that the shop drawings weren't reviewed yet, but they went ahead and started to work. So
Now, shop drawings for those valves that were submitted.
for the
those
whole
were
irrigation
submitted-
system, the whole irrigation system was never approved.
Well,
Yeah.
I know that, but
Okay.
now return now, okay, so I have a water system. Now I can submit the pipe separate than I can submit my valves, and that's what we did. I submitted separate packages. I don't have to submit all
No,
the total
we only
package.
have one in our system. We only have
Okay,
one
well,
package.
it-
And they were
talk to
combined
Sherry.
together. Yeah, they were combined together. If they were separated, we could have done something different.
You know, you talk to Sharon, she has multiple
Okay.
ones I sent her. She kept.
Long story short, we do have the quantities. We found out what was installed, and there was some pipe and wire that was never used on the job that's still in their possession. So we thought, public can't pay for that kind of thing. If you don't have it in use, it just doesn't make sense to pay. And again, that's between these two guys. If there's an argument between the quantities, that ought to be between you, but I don't think you ought to be paying for something that's not in your possession. Their stocking fee is one thing, and that's already been approved through this last pay estimate we got from you guys. I think there was the pipe and wire.
The
but I
pipe
think
and
you agree
wire
that
was
should be-
deducted.
Yeah, deducted.
Was deducted, but I told you that we offered to bring the pipe and wire, hand it to you, and you hand off to the county if they wanted it, which there was no need. The county would have no use for
Yeah.
some irrigation pipe and wire, so that's why J. Crew decided to just go ahead and mark that off.
So I think we're whole now, at least in my opinion, with this, and so I hate to see this come up again, but that's what happened.
Long story short, the three of you, the pay estimate that's been submitted for today, are you all in agreement with that pay estimate?
Yes.
To be paid? Okay.
Yeah, there's just a change order, or I guess a credit that would need to be approved, and that credit, total amount's like 20, the last one I seen.
Well, that would be in the credit that we're paying in the chain, in the,
Correct, but we have to approve that.
We'll do that at
way
the very end.
bottom,
We'll
at
do
the
that at the
very
very end of
end,
the
you can show a
project.
change order credit, that way we can bill everything out 100%, then bill that change order deduct credit, so it shows a
Right.
minus, and that
And
way, you
there's some
bill out
items
100%, then you bill out a negative. in
there's some items
account.
that went above and below. I think we're net $150,000 under budget, with it, below the budget, so we're in that stage right now.
Yeah.
We had a change for NDOT wanted some more things I think we explained last week, or last meeting.
Yeah, there were
But,
some lights that they wanted to have moved.
Brad, to answer your question, I think we're whole with the numbers now with the irrigation system. Should be able to move
The
forward.
latest is included in your
Yeah,
invoices that they all agree on.
If I can just summarize, we're good. We're good. We've agreed on that. From your perspective, if I was sitting in your side, I still think this worked out well. If everybody had perfect information, which we never do, yeah, probably it shouldn't have maybe even been bid and started. I grant you that. But sort of never the wrong time to do the right thing. And so, you still overall save money on what I think you would have had, it would have been a useless watering system. So I just wanted you guys to feel better about that. I wasn't sure the communication was all up to speed from all of our ends. So that was my purpose today.
Anybody have anything else? Move down to the road paving request.
Yeah, it's been-
That's been removed.
Correct, drawn. That'll be back on the agenda in May. Mr. Jesse did not have all of his numbers together.
The meeting in April will be canceled. Won't have a meeting until May, not unless,
Unless something comes
Something
up where we
comes
have
up
to,
and
have to
have to
approve
schedule.
something, there's some kind of emergency, so I've got a couple members that's gonna be gone during that month, and
you're gonna go over this
yes,
now.
sure. This board, in the past, assisted in an overseas trip to Italy in paying for from TIF districts around the Shell buildings. Last year, this board was successful in attracting an Italian company to come to Delaware County. They're operating here today. It's good. We have been invited by the state of Indiana to accompany a gentleman named Jan Wiedemann, who is the IEDC German contact, to assist the county in a trip to Germany to be introduced to German companies who may have interest in the Fusion Road Shell building. So Jan has proposed dates in April 11th through the 17th for that trip, and he has provided a professional services contract. His total fee is around $9,000 to basically coordinate the entire trip. The trip to Germany was around $8,000. To Italy was around $8,000. I think these are important trips. We have to take our shell building information to companies in order to try to properly market the building. And this board would like to do that. This is Jan's professional services contract. It's very simple. It basically just says he will coordinate the trip. He will introduce us to companies. He has provided me a list of companies and contacts that he will introduce us to, which I'd like to remain confidential at this time for obvious reasons. But I'd like to have approval for myself and Commissioner King to execute this agreement and to travel in April. Funding from the Magna TIF district, which is where the funding would come from, which is adjacent to the Shell building, and would support the efforts to market that building. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's a simple contract. You can read it real quickly. I just received it, or I would have had it too sooner.
And the last one is where we got field track.
Yeah. Yes. And we have a second Italian company that's looking at a building in Park 1 right now as we speak, as a result of that previous trip. So that was the first economic development trip ever taken by representatives of Delaware County that resulted in an actual project being brought back to Delaware County. So we did have good success, yes.
And the building they have, they are going to build a manufacturing part onto it, correct?
Correct, yes.
I might say we're glad to have Phil Track there.
Mhm.
It was a productive trip.
So if you follow Inside Indiana Business, the governor of the state of Indiana just returned from a trip to Europe, visiting several different businesses, and Jan is the same gentleman who takes the governor of the state of Indiana on his visits to, so.
I'll move to approve the agreement as presented.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next, we'll move down to invoices. Entertain a motion to pay all invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to pay all invoices. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Have anything from the public? If not, I'll
Joe,
yeah.
Joe had demo agreement.
I passed out the demolition agreement for the Schroeder Brothers demo of the Getz building in Daleville. It's incredibly standard, so I won't go over too many details. They were the low bidder at $48,250, and the RFP has a completion date of April 26th. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay. So apparently Schroeder Brothers is good with this agreement as is, we don't have to make any changes. We just need to get your approval to have James sign and get this project going.
I'll move to approve the agreement for demolition.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That it?
Roger, do we have change order number 4?
We do. I gave that, action number 5. You wanna, that?
I don't have the updated one. Will it be a problem to hold this until the May meeting?
This is for additional signal work. Is that?
Yeah.
It will.
For signal work, so right now, you got the crosswalks that we afford, that's people across McGalliard.
Okay.
No lights, say, or the center. So right now, they just run across McGalliard.
Well, there's lights there now. What NDOT wants to do is take a flasher on the north side of McGalliard and Morrison, move it back towards the island.
Yes.
That's what that's.
That's what, yeah, no push button, not the light.
We've been going around with the traffic engineer, I think, several months on this, so.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, this right here, we'll just complete that up, that way, it's actually, the crosswalks are, it's really usable, not.
Roger, do you have a copy of that change order you can review for the board real quick?
Yes. So, this change order is amount of $14,583. There's no time added to this. We will have to make an adjustment eventually. but-
Yeah, because that time was kind of
Right.
left open, I don't know, as soon as it's approved, I have to get with Morphe, see what they're gonna take to get, to add, plus and take them, to get that material, because I don't know what's.
But this allows them to get the materials and things
The
ready for
board
that.
had previously approved the crosswalks. Now they have put a cost on for the crosswalks. And that cost is again, how much, Roger?
$14,583.00.
That's for the flashing light, you'll push the button, they can cross.
That's in there. What it does is they wanted more signal, the signal had moved back towards the little island there when you make a right turn to Morrison Road. And they also wanted some additional signs that shows, pedestrian crossings. They wanted a couple. NDOT did, yes. Their traffic engineer, it's a big intersection, so they're,
Will this change order wrap up that whole intersection?
that one and then Chatham Lane, that's a whole.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
There's another copy.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Would this board like to watch the video?
Yeah.
So, in a previous meeting, this board authorized a video to be made about Delaware County in order for the shell buildings to be marketed to both Italian and German companies. So, Mark Slusher has prepared that video and we'll show it today. So if you speak Italian, you'll really enjoy this. If you don't, you'll just look at pictures.
I'll get a link to Brad to send out too. They'll have a link to the video and the voiceover script in English so you can follow along with it. And basically the video is broken down into a couple of segments. Like an introduction.
That's nice.
A section on the education that highlights Ball State, Ivy Tech, the workforce that's here, and different things. So you'll see a couple of sections, even though you may not understand.
Situata a circa 50 miglia a nord-est di Indianapolis, nell'Indiana centro-orientale, la contea di Delaware ha una popolazione di 117.000 persone. La regione del centro-est dell'Indiana ha una popolazione di quasi 430.000 persone. Essendo la contea più popolosa della regione, la contea di Delaware offre molte risorse per gli affari e opportunità di investimento. L'economia della contea impiega 52.248 persone e offre un panorama economico diversificato. La sostenibilità e crescita dell'economia locale della contea di Delaware sono guidate da istruzione, produzione, logistica e distribuzione, assistenza sanitaria e tecnologia dell'informazione. Per quanto riguarda gli affari e la produzione, la contea di Delaware ospita diverse aziende Fortune 500, tra cui Navient, Concentrix, Progress Rail Services e il fornitore per Honda Kehin Aircon North America. La contea di Delaware è anche sede di 3 parchi industriali completamente attrezzati e un parco tecnologico certificato. Lo stato dell'Indiana è noto come il crocevia dell'America. Un sistema stradale superiore fornisce un accesso eccellente alle autostrade statali e nazionali. Questa posizione geografica consente l'accesso su strada all'80% della popolazione sia degli Stati Uniti che del Canada entro solo 24 ore. La stretta vicinanza della contea di Delaware ai clienti fa sì che gli ordini vengano eseguiti più rapidamente, che i prodotti raggiungano il mercato a gran velocità e che le scorte si riducano in modo da aumentare i margini di profitto. La contea di Delaware è anche sede di una università nazionale classificata. Ball State University è una delle principali istituzioni di istruzione superiore con un numero di studenti di oltre 20.000. Gli studenti di Ball State possono scegliere tra una vasta gamma di programmi accademici a livello di laurea, master e dottorato. Ci sono più di 76 diversi master, 15 dottorati e 2 programmi specialistici in 7 facoltà accademiche. Oltre ai programmi accademici di base nelle arti, nelle scienze e nelle discipline umanistiche, l'università offre oltre 190 corsi di laurea, diplomi pre-professionali e programmi di studio minori. Ball State University è classificata a livello nazionale tra i primi 25 per i migliori corsi di laurea e post-laurea in molti campi. La contea di Delaware è anche sede di un campus Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech Community College è la più grande istituzione pubblica post-secondaria nell'Indiana, con più di 170.000 studenti iscritti all'anno. Il college ha 4 campus nell'Indiana centro-orientale e offre quasi 40 corsi di laurea in 8 facoltà accademiche. Il campus di Muncie si trova nel centro della città e nel parco industriale su Cowan Road e ospita oltre 3.700 studenti. La formazione professionale di Ivy Tech Community College offre soluzioni locali, economiche e personalizzabili per le esigenze di formazione professionale e industriale dell'Indiana. Insieme, Ball State e Ivy Tech forniscono accesso a un gruppo talentuoso di candidati locali qualificati e orientati alla carriera. In conclusione, la contea di Delaware offre i vantaggi di una grande area metropolitana con la comodità e la qualità di vita di una comunità più piccola e confortevole. La forza delle nostre comunità scaturisce dalle persone che vivono e lavorano qui. Con una forza lavoro giovane e diversificata e con un'etica del lavoro forte e produttiva, la nostra storia, stabilità e crescita faranno da catalizzatore per voi mentre progredite e raggiungete i vostri obiettivi e i risultati della vostra azienda. Saluti dalla contea di Delaware, collaborando con voi per costruire e promuovere il futuro della vostra impresa.
I said it highlights, I'm trying to use some clips that highlight diversity in the county. And like I said, I'll send that script to you. It's broken down in sections and it talks about the workforce, how we're a 24-hour drive from 80% of population of North America is a big selling point, and our transportation, rail, and all that. So it highlights everything. So that's it.
So this was narrated by Danielle Nardi, who's a psychology professor at Ball State University, who is from Italy. and he was so excited to narrate this, you wouldn't believe it. So, yeah, so he sent the, I know he's gonna send this to lots of people in Italy, so.
But on the Italy trip, when we went to their, I guess what, like our Chamber of Commerce, we were only expecting to walk in and see, what, 3 or 4 people in there?
Right.
And all of our stuff was done in the English language instead of in Italian. We walked in there, what, 25, 30 people sitting around the room. So when we left there, we decided to do something like this. That way, when we go in and we play this, they can understand it. And because we was trying to translate everything else for them, and just, it wasn't happening.
I didn't do a very good job.
Very nice.
Well, if we don't have anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?